Imagine your blood sugar is crashing. You have maybe 90 seconds before the cognitive decline becomes physically paralyzing.
Right.
Your hands are already starting to shake. You're sitting at a desk, and you urgently need a specific piece of data from a spreadsheet to execute a decision that, keeps your company solvent.
And the clock is ticking.
Exactly. But you cannot simply look at the screen because you are legally blind.
Right.
The only way you can extract that data is through an audio interface. We're talking about a screen reader firing off speech at like 500 words per minute.
Which is incredibly fast.
Yeah. And suddenly the software glitches. The audio just cuts out. You have 60 seconds left. You can't see the monitor to debug the visual Your biology is actively shutting down.
It's a terrifying scenario.
It really is. Panic is beginning to flood your chest, screaming at you that you are trapped.
Yeah.
So what is your very next thought?
Well, for most of us, we would just freeze.
Yeah, we would succumb to the adrenaline, the unfairness of the situation, the sheer terror of that physiological crash. But today, we are opening a window into a mind that does not freeze. A mind that simply flips a switch, severs the panic from the problem, and executes a secondary protocol just to survive.
And I think it's crucial to state right up front, the scenario you just described, it isn't a thought experiment.
Right.
It's a daily compounding reality. We are looking at the foundational prologue to a work titled The Autonomous Mind, Blueprint for Absolute Mental Freedom by Ben Sheargold.
Yes.
And when you open this text, the first thing that really strikes you is the absolute rejection of theoretical philosophy.
Totally.
I mean, most literature on mental resilience is written from a place of safety.
Right.
Right, looking backward at a difficult time or theorizing from a clinical perspective.
Yeah, from an armchair.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But this log is the opposite. It is an active operational architecture built under extreme, unyielding pressure.
And let me just set the terms of engagement for you, the listener, right now. Whether you are listening to this deep dive on your morning commute, or during a grueling training session, or while you're navigating some high-stakes crucible in your own professional life, we are stripping away the modern fluff today.
We really are.
We are leaving behind the generic motivational cliches. You will not hear us tell you to, manifest success or find your center.
No, absolutely not. That's not what this is.
Right. The mission today is to decode a highly paradoxical concept. We're looking at how absolute, brutal, structural constraints, the kind of constraints that the medical and business communities would typically view as completely debilitating, how they do not actually limit your freedom.
It's fascinating.
It is. Instead, when engineered correctly, those constraints actually force the development of an impenetrable mental autonomy. So we are treating this text as the introduction to a masterclass in mental architecture.
And that premise, it demands a complete reevaluation of how we view adversity. Sheargold operates from this lived experience blueprint where theory is just an unaffordable luxury.
A luxury he doesn't have.
Exactly. I mean, theory is what you debate in a university classroom when the temperature is regulated and your survival is guaranteed, right?
Right.
But when you are forced to manage daily biological threats alongside the demands of building a company, any system that relies on inspiration or theoretical motivation will inevitably collapse.
Because inspiration fades.
It always does.
Yep.
You need an operating system that functions when everything else is failing.
Well, the prologue opens by drawing a rather harsh line in the sand regarding how the vast majority of us live.
Yes, it does.
Sheargold describes the standard human operating state as drifting through a haze of gray areas.
The gray areas, right.
Yeah, he says we allow ourselves to become bogged down in emotional reactions to minor inconveniences. Our minds are filled with continuous, unstructured clutter.
We let external circumstances dictate our internal state.
Exactly, like someone cuts you off in traffic and your cortisol spikes, ruining your focus for the next 3 hours.
Or a project gets delayed.
Right, a project gets delayed and you spend the rest of the day complaining about the incompetence of your team. And then Sheargold writes with just chilling objectivity, I do not have that luxury. My reality is defined by absolute unyielding boundaries.
And the phrasing there, that haze of gray areas, it merits some deep neurobiological and psychological scrutiny.
Let's get into it.
Think about what a gray area represents in our daily environment. It's a space devoid of immediate fatal consequences.
A buffer zone.
Exactly, it's a buffer zone. When the environment does not demand total precision for survival, the human brain naturally defaults to a state of conservation and wandering.
Right.
Neuroscientists often refer to the default mode network. It's the brain's state when we are not focused on an objective task.
So that's when we ruminate.
Yes. We ruminate, we project anxiety into the future, we obsess over social slights. We are allowed to exist in this cluttered, emotionally reactive state simply because our environment is structurally safe enough to absorb our inefficiency.
Okay, but I'm going to push back on that framing slightly.
Sure.
Characterizing human emotion and mental wandering as a luxury, I mean, that feels incredibly dismissive of human nature.
How so?
Well, we aren't machines, right? Isn't this haze, this tendency to feel frustration or get distracted, isn't that just a symptom of having a complex human consciousness?
I see what you're saying.
It just seems a bit extreme to label basic human emotional processing as an environmental luxury. Like right now, if a listener gets a frustrating Slack message from their boss at 9 p.m. on a Friday, their blood pressure rises. They get angry. That isn't a luxury. That is a physiological stress response to a modern problem.
Well, the stress response is real, but the environment's tolerance of that response, that is the luxury.
Okay, explain that.
If you receive that Slack message and spend the next 4 hours seething, pacing your living room, composing angry replies in your head, you are burning immense cognitive fuel.
Right.
Yet you don't die.
Grew.
Your house doesn't collapse. You wake up the next morning and go to work. The system absorbs your inefficiency. That is the buffer zone I'm talking about.
Ah, I get it.
Sheargold is making the point that his specific physical reality has stripped that buffer zone away entirely. If he allows a wave of frustration to hijack his executive function for 4 hours, the consequences aren't just a bad mood.
That they're operational failure.
Operational failure and biological crisis. The lack of structural boundaries in modern life actually enables us to live in a perpetual state of low-grade emotional chaos. We are never forced to optimize our internal state because the external world rarely demands it.
Wow. Okay. So if the buffer zone allows us to drift, we really need to examine the exact mechanics of the boundaries that remove that buffer for the author. We have to look at the physical crucible.
We do.
Because the text introduces Ben Sheargold as the founder of Soundwave Pty Ltd.
Right.
But the context surrounding that title is staggering. He is a legally blind founder. He lives with a highly complex, rare genetic condition called Wolfram Syndrome.
Yes.
And his existence requires the unblinking, strict management of insulin-dependent diabetes, coupled with complete reliance on audio and tactile interfaces just to navigate a physical world that, frankly, assumes everyone can see.
And to understand the magnitude of this, we really must break down the pathophysiology and the operational load of Wolfram Syndrome.
Let's do that, because it's not just blindness.
No, it's not simply a matter of poor eyesight.
Yeah.
Wolfram Syndrome is a progressive neurodegenerative disorder. It often includes optic atrophy.
Meaning the optic nerve degrades over time.
Exactly, stealing visual input piece by piece. It also frequently involves deafness or severe hearing loss, which further restricts sensory access.
Which is terrifying when you rely on audio interfaces.
Precisely. And it compromises the body's ability to produce insulin.
Right.
Consider the baseline cognitive load of managing insulin-dependent diabetes alone. The human pancreas is an autonomous, brilliantly calibrated organ, right? It regulates blood glucose in the background.
You never even think about it.
But when that fails, the conscious mind must step in and manually run the math. You're constantly calculating carbohydrate intake, physical exertion, stress hormone levels, and insulin dosages.
You are acting as your own manual organ.
Exactly. You are calculating biological variables 24/7 just to stay conscious.
It is a continuous, high-stakes background process running constantly in the brain. And if you miscalculate, the punishment isn't a bad performance review.
No.
The punishment is a hypoglycemic event, loss of consciousness, or worse.
And then you have to add the layer of legal blindness to that continuous biological calculus.
Right.
Every interaction with the external environment becomes an active translation process. A sighted person walks into a room, glances around, and instantly absorbs the spatial architecture.
The location of obstacles, the available tools, the text on a whiteboard.
Exactly. And that happens passively, in fractions of a second. Sheargold must actively construct that reality using secondary senses.
Because the primary sense is gone.
Right. He must rely on audio interfaces, those screen readers narrating digital information at blistering speeds and tactile feedback, to bypass a visual architecture that was built without him in mind.
The friction involved in simply navigating a room or reading a market report or managing an inbox It's exponentially higher than it is for a sighted individual.
It really is.
And that is why the word founder in the text carries so much weight.
Absolutely.
He isn't sitting in a hospital room merely surviving this baseline. He isn't dedicating 100% of his energy just to managing Wolfram Syndrome. He is the founder of a company.
He's building an enterprise within the confines of these biological constraints.
Yeah. We see so many people talk about overcoming adversity to win a medal or finish a race, which are discrete events. They have a finish line.
Right, the end.
But this is continuous, daily, high-stakes operational execution in the business world, stacked directly on top of high-stakes life-or-death operational execution in the biological world.
And building a company demands strategic vision, aggressive problem-solving, team leadership, and the rapid synthesis of complex market data.
It's hard enough for anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And doing that while your baseline existence requires the manual regulation of your endocrine system and the continuous translation of a sighted world through audio interfaces, it leaves absolutely zero bandwidth for mental clutter.
Zero.
You cannot afford to throw a tantrum because an audio interface is lagging, because the tantrum does not fix the software.
And you still need the data.
Right, you still need the data to make a business decision. You cannot afford to wallow in self-pity about the insulin requirements, because self-pity does not stabilize blood sugar.
Wow.
The physical crucible literally burns away the capacity for complaint, because complaint is a function of the gray area.
I really want you, the listener, to think about your own morning today. Think about the friction that might have derailed your focus.
Yeah, the little things.
Right. Maybe your internet connection dropped during a crucial meeting. Maybe someone made a passive-aggressive comment in the break room. Maybe you didn't sleep well and decided to just coast through the morning.
We've all been there.
Now, contrast your reaction to those events with an existence where every physical, sensory, and biological variable must be strictly, actively managed through sheer force of will just to reach the baseline starting line of a normal workday.
The contrast is jarring.
It's completely jarring. But the physical and sensory constraints only represent half of the architecture described in this prologue.
That's right.
Because the true threat, the element that takes this from a physical struggle to a profound cognitive battle, comes from the inside.
This is an internal threat.
Yeah. Sheargold possesses a rare cognitive phenomenon that essentially weaponizes his own memory against him.
The text reveals that alongside Wolfram Syndrome, he has highly superior autobiographical memory, or HSAM.
Okay, stop right there, because we need to completely de-romanticize this concept.
Yes, we really do.
Pop culture has totally warped our understanding of photographic or perfect memory. When we see this in television shows, it is always a superpower.
Right, the brilliant detective.
The brilliant detective walks into a crime scene, glances around, and perfectly recalls the evidence weeks later. The genius lawyer memorizes a library of precedents overnight and uses it to win an impossible case. It is always portrayed as the ultimate intellectual advantage.
It's a trope.
So I have to ask, why does the text frame HSAM not as an asset, but as an active threat to his survival? If you can remember everything perfectly, shouldn't navigating a complex business and medical landscape be significantly easier?
Well, that pop culture portrayal fundamentally ignores the biological purpose of memory, and more importantly, the necessity of decay.
The necessity of forgetting.
Exactly. To understand why HSAM is a threat, we have to look at the mechanics of human trauma and stress. For the average person, forgetting is an evolutionary survival mechanism.
It's a feature, not a bug.
It's absolutely a feature. If you experience a terrifying event, say, a severe car accident, or a deeply humiliating public failure, or a life-threatening medical emergency, the immediate memory is seared into your nervous system.
You feel everything.
You feel the adrenaline, the terror, the sensory overload. But over time, the brain actively degrades the emotional intensity of that memory. The sharp edges blur. The physiological response decouples from the narrative memory.
So you remember it, but you don't feel it.
Right. You can remember that the car accident happened 5 years ago without experiencing the identical heart rate spike and cortisol flood you felt on the day of the crash.
The brain creates emotional distance so we can continue to function. It files the memory away in the archives rather than playing it on a continuous loop on the main screen.
But with HSAM, that decay mechanism is broken or entirely absent. Sheargold describes his mind as an unedited ledger of every day he has lived.
An unedited ledger.
He does not just recall dates or historical facts. He retains specific sensory details, emotional states, and environmental factors with flawless, vivid clarity.
Oh, wow.
If he recalls a moment of acute medical terror from a decade ago, The memory does not return as a fuzzy narrative. It returns with the full force of the original sensory and emotional experience.
That's debilitating.
The smell of the hospital, the sound of the monitors, the exact sensation of panic in his chest. It all floods the nervous system as if it is happening in the present tense.
The physiological loop there is terrifying. It means the past is never actually the past. It is always lying in wait, just as loud and demanding as the present moment.
Exactly.
Give me an example of how this practically plays out, because we need to synthesize these two massive constraints. We have the physical crucible, the blindness, the diabetes, and the cognitive threat of the unedited ledger.
Yeah.
How do they interact?
Well, imagine Sheargold is experiencing a sudden, dangerous drop in blood sugar. The physiological stress alarms are ringing.
The baseline panic.
Right. His hands are tactilely interacting with a braille display or an audio interface to calculate the necessary intervention. The present moment is already saturated with critical, high-stakes variables.
He's already at maximum cognitive load.
Yes. Now imagine that the specific tone of the medical alert or the physical sensation of the dropping blood glucose triggers an HSAM recall of a previous near-fatal hypoglycemic event from years prior.
Oh, man. A completely perfect, unedited replay of a past trauma crashing into an active, present-tense medical emergency.
The nervous system is suddenly bombarded by both the present biological crisis and the perfectly preserved terror of the past crisis. The cognitive load doubles instantly.
He's fighting two battles at once.
Sheargold writes explicitly, "If I allowed my mind to drift, the combination of physical blindness, chronic illness, and an unstoppable flood of perfect past memories would create an inescapable prism."
An inescapable prison. I mean, if his mind drifts into the gray area, if he allows himself to react emotionally to the present, it acts as a skeleton key that unlocks the entire unedited ledger of past trauma.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
The past and the biological present would completely overwhelm his executive function. He would be paralyzed, trapped in a sensory feedback loop, while his physical biology actively deteriorates.
And this is the precipice the Prologue brings us to. When the alternative to focus is literal cognitive and physical paralysis, a reaction is no longer sufficient.
Survival demands proaction.
It demands the creation of a rigorous, impenetrable internal operating system. He could not cure the Wolfram Syndrome. He could not restore his optic nerve. He could not erase the HSAM.
Those are fixed realities.
The external and biological variables were entirely fixed. The only space remaining for him to assume control was the internal processing architecture.
Which is the pivot point of the entire text. We move from the brutal conditions of the laboratory to the technology forged within it, the autonomous mind.
Yes.
And this brings us to the first pillar of this architecture. Sheargold calls it the Stoic switch.
The Stoic switch.
The text defines this mechanism as the immediate, deliberate suppression of emotional noise in the face of crisis, shifting instantly from panic to objective execution.
The adjectives are the most critical part of that definition. Immediate and deliberate.
Right.
This is not a passive philosophical stance where you read Marcus Aurelius and, try to maintain a calm demeanor over tea. This is an active, highly engineered neurological override.
The best way I can visualize this is by looking at the damage control protocols on a military submarine.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine a submarine is deep underwater, an environment entirely hostile to human life, much like Sheargold's baseline.
Right.
Suddenly, the hull breaches in one sector. Water begins blasting in. Panic ensues in that compartment. If the command structure pauses to process the terror of the situation, the water spreads, the systems short out, and the entire vessel implodes.
It's a catastrophic failure.
Exactly. So what is the protocol? The bulkheads slam shut. Massive steel doors instantly isolate the flooded compartment. The screams, the water, the panic, it is all sealed off.
Oh.
The command center does not try to fix the flooded room while the water is rising. They seal it off so the rest of the submarine can maintain buoyancy, maneuver, and execute a survival strategy.
That's intense.
The Stoic switch is the neurological bulkhead.
That analogy, it captures the required ruthlessness of the mechanism perfectly.
It has to be ruthless.
In neurobiological terms, a crisis triggers the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center. The amygdala floods the body with adrenaline and cortisol, essentially hijacking the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logic, planning, and objective execution.
The amygdala hijack.
Right. The Stoic switch is a trained reflex to bypass that hijack. It is the conscious, brutal severing of the emotional response from the objective reality of the threat.
But I want to argue against this for a moment because this goes against almost every tenet of modern psychology and therapeutic practice.
It definitely does.
Therapists, counselors, and mental health advocates constantly tell us that suppressing emotion is dangerous. We are told that if you bottle up trauma, if you don't sit with your feelings and process them in the moment, that energy becomes toxic.
Yes, that's the prevailing wisdom.
It manifests as physical illness or leads to a psychological explosion down the line. You cannot just build a steel bulkhead in your mind and expect the flooded compartment to magically drain itself. Isn't this kind of deliberate suppression ultimately destructive?
Well, the modern therapeutic advice you are referencing is designed for people living in the buffer zone.
Ah, back to the gray area.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Therapy, processing, and sitting with your feelings are activities that require a foundation of physical safety.
Right.
If you're sitting on a comfortable couch in a regulated environment, absolutely. Process your trauma. But Sheargold is operating on a different timeline.
A completely different timeline.
If your blood sugar is 40 and plummeting, and you are navigating an unfamiliar sighted world using an audio interface that has just glitched, taking a moment to honor your emotional truth will literally result in a coma.
You don't have the luxury of time?
No. The shift from panic to execution cannot be a gradual process transition. It must be a binary, instantaneous cut.
Emotion becomes a luxury he cannot afford.
Emotion, in the context of pure operational survival, is static on the radio frequency.
Static.
When the command center needs to transmit life-saving coordinates, static is lethal. And remember the compounding factor of HSAM.
The unedited ledger.
Right. The emotional noise is never just about the current glitching interface. It is the instantaneous recall of every time a glitching interface nearly cost him his life.
It's overwhelming.
The stoic switch is the only mechanism that prevents the unedited ledger from overwhelming the prefrontal cortex. It isolates what is physically occurring from the historical and emotional weight of what is occurring.
I want to turn this directly to you, the listener. Think about the daily crises that disrupt your workflow or your peace of mind. An unexpected financial hit, a confrontational email from a client, a failure in a project you poured hours into.
The everyday crucibles.
Right. When that happens, what is your reflex? Do you immediately drop the bulkhead, cut the emotional static, and shift into objective execution?
Most people don't.
No. Or do you allow the surge of unfairness, anxiety, and frustration to flood the command center? Do you let the emotional noise dictate your timeline for solving the problem, losing hours or days to paralysis because you are too busy validating your own stress?
Most people let the water rise. They believe that their emotional reaction to a problem is an essential part of solving the problem.
But it's not.
No. The stoic switch requires the profound realization that the crisis does not care how you feel about it. The biological reality of a hypoglycemic crash does not negotiate with your exhaustion.
The market does not care if you feel overwhelmed.
Exactly. The objective problem only responds to objective, executed action. The switch is the prerequisite for that action.
So the bulkhead drops. The stoic switch is flipped. The panic and historical trauma of HSAM are sealed off. You have achieved a state of pure, objective execution.
Right.
But being objective doesn't automatically solve the problem.
Not at all.
Once you are in that cold, calculated state, how do you actually process the immensely complex variables in front of you? How do you navigate the chaos when your physical senses are compromised? That requires the second pillar of Sheargold's architecture.
The second pillar is termed binary logic.
Binary logic.
The text defines this as the radical simplification of complex and multifaceted problems into absolute, unyielding truths. 0 or 1, functional or broken, within my control or completely outside of it.
The parallels here to the technology he relies on are just brilliant.
They really are.
As a legally blind founder, his interaction with the digital world is mediated by software screen readers, braille displays. At its core, all software is binary. It is code. It is a series of ones and zeros, an algorithmic framework. Right. He has literally taken the architecture of the machines he relies on to interface with the world and downloaded it into his own cognitive processing center.
He's become algorithmic out of necessity.
But I cannot let this slide without a massive challenge.
Go for it.
Human beings are not binary code. We are incredibly messy, complex endocrine and psychological systems. Life isn't a spreadsheet. Situations are rarely entirely black or white. By reducing every interaction, every crisis, and every obstacle to a 0 or a 1, isn't he stripping away the very nuance that makes us human?
It seems that way, yes.
Doesn't this level of radical algorithmic simplification eventually lead to a psychotic break from reality? You can't just code away human complexity.
Your objection is rooted in the belief that nuance is always valuable.
Well, isn't it?
In the realm of literature, art, or theoretical debate, nuance is beautiful. But in the realm of high-stakes operational execution and biological survival, nuance is lethal friction.
Lethal friction.
This brings us full circle to the haze of the gray area.
Yeah.
People cling to nuance because it allows them to avoid making a definitive, absolute choice. If a situation is complex, you don't have to act immediately. You can deliberate. You can form committees. You can worry.
You can hide in the complexity.
Exactly. Binary logic is an intentional, ruthless, cognitive weapon designed to slaughter hesitation.
Slaughter hesitation. That's a powerful phrase.
Look at the specific categorizations within my control or completely outside of it. If a problem is a 1, meaning there is an actionable step he can take to alter the outcome, he executes that step.
And if it's a 0?
If a problem is a 0, meaning the variables are governed by other people, by the market, or by the irreversible reality of his genetics, he drops it entirely.
There is no 0.5.
No.
There is no, well, maybe if I worry about this genetic reality enough, it will change.
Exactly. Worrying about a 0 is a misallocation of cognitive resources. And when your cognitive resources are already taxed to the absolute limit by blindness, an unedited ledger of memory, and manual endocrine regulation, misallocating resources is a death sentence.
You can't waste a single processor cycle.
By strictly, brutally categorizing a problem as a 0 or a 1, Sheargold eliminates the paralyzing anxiety of the uncontrollable.
The anxiety of the uncontrollable. If we are honest with ourselves, that is where the vast majority of human suffering occurs.
It really is.
We burn 90% of our mental energy agonizing over the zeros. We obsess over what our colleagues think of us, which we cannot control. We lie awake worrying about macroeconomic shifts, which we cannot control. We endlessly replay past mistakes, which, as Sheargold's HSAM proves, cannot be edited or controlled.
Let's examine the other half of the binary logic equation, functional or broken.
Okay.
This is a pure, unsentimental engineering mindset applied to human adversity. If an audio interface crashes, you don't negotiate with the software. You don't take it personally. You don't lament the unfairness of the bug. The software is broken. You either reboot it, write a patch, or find a functional workaround.
You fix it?
Sheargold applies this exact algorithmic standard to his daily reality. Is this process functional or broken? If a business strategy is failing, it is broken. Fix it or abandon it.
And biology.
If a biological intervention is not stabilizing his glucose, it is broken. Adjust the dosage. There is 0 bandwidth allocated for lamenting the brokenness. Lamentation requires the gray area. Lamentation requires the luxury of time.
It is an incredibly severe way to live, but I am starting to see how it is profoundly freeing.
It is freedom through discipline.
Radical simplification. When your sensory inputs are restricted and your internal memory is flooding your system with noise, you cannot afford to hold complex, nuanced, multi-layered emotional debates with yourself over every hurdle.
You'd never make a decision.
You need a fast, infallible algorithm. Input problem, scan variables. Is it within my control? 1. Initiate action. Is it outside my control? 0. Discard from active processing memory.
And when you fuse the Stoic switch with binary logic, you establish the closed-loop system of the autonomous mind.
The architecture is complete.
A crisis hits. The amygdala flares. Instantly, the Stoic switch drops the bulkhead, severing the emotional panic and the HSAM trauma recall from the executive function.
The emotional noise is gone.
The mind achieves cold, objective clarity. Immediately, binary logic scans the crisis. It strips away the nuance, sorts the variables into controllable ones and uncontrollable zeros, and directs all remaining cognitive power into executing solutions for the ones.
It is a system of absolute efficiency.
It has to be.
Which brings us to the culmination of this prologue and the explicit reason this text exists in the public domain. Sheargold makes it very clear that this operational log is not a personal diary meant to garner sympathy.
No, not at all.
It is not a memoir. He built this log for a highly specific audience. He writes that it is for those who listen to this log while training, commuting, or pushing through their own daily crucibles.
He's sharing the technology.
Yes. He is taking this hyper-refined, battle-tested survival architecture and offering it as a masterclass framework for anyone facing friction.
And in the process of offering this framework, he aggressively dismantles the billion-dollar industry of modern self-help.
Oh, totally tears it down.
He rejects the fluff and the generic motivational noise. This is a crucial distinction for the listener to understand. Motivation, by its very neurological definition, is an emotion.
This is just a feeling.
It is a temporary chemical state governed by dopamine and external stimuli. And as we established with the Stoic switch, emotion is unreliable in a crisis.
It's static.
Exactly. If you rely on feeling motivated to push through a grueling physical training session or a toxic workplace or a personal tragedy, what happens when the dopamine fades?
You quit.
What happens when you wake up and the motivation simply isn't there? The system fails.
You fail because motivation is a resident of the gray area. It ebbs and flows based on how well you slept, what you ate, and whether someone validated you that day.
Sheargold's text demands that you replace the fluctuating, unreliable emotion of motivation with the rigid, unbreakable architecture of an operating system.
An operating system.
And this reveals the profound paradox at the very heart of the prologue, the core thesis of the entire text. Absolute mental freedom is not achieved by removing all constraints.
I want to pause and repeat that because it contradicts everything modern consumer culture sells us. Absolute mental freedom is not achieved by removing all constraints.
It's a hard pill to swallow.
We are constantly bombarded with the idea that freedom is the absence of friction. Freedom is the beach vacation. Freedom is the empty calendar. Freedom is having enough money to never face a hard constraint again.
Yet Sheargold's reality proves the exact opposite. His unyielding physical, sensory, and biological boundaries did not crush his mind. The constraints acted as an evolutionary pressure cooker.
A pressure cooker.
They compressed his cognitive processes like carbon into a diamond. The sheer brutal weight of Wolfram Syndrome, blindness, and an unedited ledger forced him to build a mental architecture so impenetrable that external chaos could no longer dictate his internal state.
Wow.
He achieved mental freedom because his constraints demanded an operating system too rigorous to be compromised. Freedom was forged by the constraints.
Operational execution. That is the drumbeat of this entire text. We aren't discussing theory. We are looking at a battle-tested blueprint, and this is where the mirror turns directly onto you, the listener.
Apply it to your life.
Look closely at your own daily crucibles. Maybe it's a soul-crushing commute that drains your energy before the day begins. Maybe it's an intensely high-pressure workplace where the demands constantly outpace your resources.
Or a quiet personal struggle.
Exactly, a brutal physical training regimen, or an invisible personal struggle you are navigating behind closed doors. Are you relying on generic motivational noise to survive it? Are you waking up hoping you'll just feel inspired today, hoping the environment will be gentle with you?
Because if you are, you're vulnerable.
You are structurally vulnerable. A single glitch in your environment will bring you to your knees. It is time to stop searching for motivation and start building an operating system.
This prologue has brilliantly set the stage for the deep dives that will follow in this masterclass series. We have moved beyond the surface level of his physical reality.
We really dug into it.
We understand the pathophysiology of Wolfram Syndrome and the exhausting translation required to navigate a sighted world blind. We have explored the terrifying neurological reality of an unedited ledger via HSAM and how that continuous flood of memory necessitated a survival protocol.
Right.
And we have seen the mechanics of that protocol, the neurological bulkhead of the Stoic switch and the algorithmic triage of binary logic.
It is a staggering, highly functional blueprint for survival and execution. As we wrap up this foundational session on Sheargold's text, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought.
Something to mull over.
A question that builds on the mechanics we've just decoded, but requires you to examine the structural integrity of your own life. We have just spent the last hour exploring how extreme biological, physical, and cognitive constraints forced the creation of a brilliantly rigorous, entirely autonomous mind, a mind that cannot be hijacked by panic.
An impenetrable mind.
So you must ask yourself, is the lack of strict constraints in your own life the very thing that is keeping you weak? Is the modern buffer zone the luxury of being able to endlessly drift, complain, and wallow in emotional noise actually the prison you are trapped in? If absolute structural constraints force the development of absolute mental freedom, what is your comfort costing you?
The only way to answer that is to test the architecture. Apply binary logic to the friction you face for the rest of the day. Scan the variables. Assess what is a 1 and within your control. Discard the zeros that are not, and execute this solution without emotional static.
Execute. We'll leave it there.